The air shimmered with an otherworldly luminescence, a violet haze swirling around the towering crystalline structures that loomed over the vast alien city. Jagged spires reached into the darkened sky, pulsating with an eerie glow, their reflections dancing in the polished obsidian streets beneath. A single human stood amidst the surreal beauty, his breath shallow, heart hammering in his chest. He was an intruder in a realm not meant for his kind, an uninvited guest in the domain of a being whose presence sent ripples through the very fabric of reality. Before him, seated upon a throne woven from strands of silver energy, was a figure of unparalleled majesty. Her form was unlike anything he had ever encountered, and yet, there was something familiar about her. Slender yet imposing, her body was adorned in gleaming, iridescent exoskeletal armor, shifting colors with every subtle movement. Her elongated face bore high cheekbones and luminous eyes that held entire galaxies within them, swirling, infinite, unreadable. Her lips curled into a knowing smile. "Do you know me?" Her voice was music and thunder, a melody that resonated through his very soul. "I know you." The words sent an involuntary shudder down his spine. How could she know him? He had never set foot on this world before, never ventured beyond the boundaries of his own pale blue planet until now. And yet, there was an unmistakable certainty in her gaze, an unsettling intimacy that defied explanation. He took a step back. His voice faltered. "Who are you?" The queen tilted her head, as though amused by his hesitation. "Your kind has forgotten, as they always do." A gust of unseen wind swirled around them, carrying whispers in a language just beyond his understanding. Shadows flickered in the periphery of his vision, moving too fast to be solid, yet undeniably present. "You walk the path of those before you," she continued, her voice neither cruel nor kind. "But I remember, as I always have." His pulse pounded in his ears. The weight of her words pressed against him like an unseen force, stirring something deep in the recesses of his mind. Flashes of imagery, glimpses of something ancient and lost, fluttered at the edges of his thoughts. A burning sky. A colossal gateway carved from obsidian. Eyes like hers staring into his, not with malice, but with a terrible, knowing sadness. It made no sense. He swallowed hard. "I don't understand." Her smile widened ever so slightly. "You will." A surge of energy pulsed from her throne, washing over him in a wave of warmth and static. His vision blurred, the world around him shifting, unraveling, reforming into something else entirely. He was no longer standing in the alien city. He was elsewhere. Somewhen. The world around him dissolved into streaks of light and shadow, his mind pulled through the fabric of time and memory itself. He was falling, weightless yet aware, spiraling through an endless void that whispered and murmured in voices he did not recognize, yet somehow understood. Then, with a sudden lurch, reality snapped back into place. He stood on a battlefield beneath a sky split in two, half consumed by raging storms, the other half burning with a violet sun that should not have existed. The air was thick with the scent of ash and metal, and the ground beneath him trembled with distant explosions. Shattered structures, too massive to be of human origin, lay scattered across the desolate expanse, their surfaces charred and twisted. At first, he thought it was a hallucination, a byproduct of whatever the alien queen had done to him. But the weight of the dust clinging to his skin, the acrid bite of smoke in his lungs, the distant cries of something not quite human. It was real. And he was not alone. A figure knelt beside a dying soldier, an alien unlike any he had ever seen, yet strangely familiar. Its form was humanoid but elongated, its armor bearing intricate patterns that shimmered faintly under the eerie glow of the sky. Its breathing was ragged, hands clutching a gaping wound in its chest. And beside it stood the queen. But she was different. Younger, perhaps, though it was hard to tell. Her iridescent exoskeleton was marked with battle scars, her once pristine form caked in dust and blood. She knelt, pressing a hand to the wounded soldier's forehead, whispering something too soft for him to hear. A flicker of emotion crossed her face. Grief, regret, something deep and painful. Then, she turned her eyes to him. "You were here," she said softly. His breath caught. "No, You have forgotten, but I have not." The battlefield wavered, shifting like smoke in the wind. The dying soldier was gone, the ruins dissolving into fragments of memory. He stumbled as the ground beneath him gave way, time unraveling once more. When he found his footing again, he stood at the edge of an immense chamber, its walls lined with towering crystalline structures pulsing with an inner light. The architecture was alien, but there was something unsettlingly familiar about it, like a dream half-remembered. Rows of figures stood frozen in glass-like capsules, their forms barely visible through the translucent material. Some were human, others were not. His pulse quickened. "What is this place?" The queen stepped beside him. "A tomb," she said. "A vault of those who were lost." A terrible realization settled in his gut. "You mean, prisoners?" She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "No," she said. "Refugees." He swallowed. "From what?" Her luminous eyes met his, and he felt the weight of eternity behind them. "From you." The words sent a shiver down his spine. "That's not possible," he whispered. I don't even know where this is." The queen stepped forward, her presence both mesmerizing and terrifying. "Do you truly believe your kind is alone in the universe?" The air hummed around them. The frozen figures in the capsules stood as silent witnesses to something far greater than he could comprehend. He felt the weight of history pressing down on him, memories clawing at the edges of his mind, fragments of lives he had never lived. Yet, he had flashes of war, of burning worlds, of a decision made long ago, one that had set events into motion long before he was even born. "You don't remember," the queen murmured. "But you were once one of them. One of us." His head swam. "No." He took a step back. "That's not possible." "It is not a matter of possibility," she said. "It is a matter of truth." The capsules flickered, and in that brief moment, he saw his own reflection in the glass. Only it was not him. It was someone else. Something else. A figure clad in armor not unlike the queen's, eyes burning with a light that had long since faded. A name surfaced in his mind, unbidden. Not his name. But it had been once. His breath came in ragged gasps. What did I do?" The queen watched him with something akin to sorrow. "You ended a war," she said. His knees buckled. "You started it, too." The weight of her words sent a tremor through him, unraveling the last fragile threads of the life he had believed to be his own. The air shimmered, and he felt himself being pulled again, not through space, but through memory. And this time, he did not resist. The pull of memory was relentless, dragging him into the depths of a past he did not recall but somehow belonged to. He tumbled through fragments of time, flashes of alien suns, the thunder of war drums, the silent weeping of a dying world. Then, he was standing on a bridge. Not a bridge of metal or stone, but one woven from strands of luminous energy, suspended between two massive celestial bodies. One a burning blue star, the other a darkened husk of a dead world. Below, an endless chasm stretched into oblivion, a vortex of swirling cosmic dust. Before him, he saw himself. Or rather, who he had once been. A warrior clad in radiant armor, his form wreathed in golden light, standing at the edge of the bridge with a weapon unlike any forged by human hands. Its blade was composed of shifting energy, oscillating between solidity and pure plasma, humming with untamed power. And at the other end of the bridge stood the queen. But she was not yet a queen. She was a commander, fierce and unyielding, her exoskeletal armor adorned with the insignia of a lost empire. Her eyes, so filled with sorrow now, were ablaze with the fury of battle. "You swore an oath," she said, her voice echoing through the void. "And yet you stand here, blade drawn, ready to cast us into extinction." His past self did not answer. He only raised the weapon. The memory twisted, the vision of the past unraveling like sand slipping through his fingers. And then he was back. Back in the vault. Back in the present. The queen stood before him, waiting. He staggered, his breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. I saw it." His voice was hoarse. "I saw what I did." "You understand now," she said. It was not a question. He pressed a trembling hand to his temple, trying to steady himself against the storm of realization crashing down upon him. "I betrayed you," he whispered. "I betrayed all of you." The queen inclined her head. "Not just us." His mind reeled as the final pieces clicked into place. It had not been a simple war. It had been a genocide. And he had been its architect. The weight of it crushed him. He stumbled back, shaking his head. "No. No, this isn't possible. I'm human. I was born on Earth. I have a life, a family." "A construct," she said softly. "A life woven from illusion. A second chance, given to you by those who wish to forget the sins of the past." The capsules surrounding them flickered again, and this time he saw them clearly. Not prisoners. Not refugees. Survivors. His victims. His hands curled into fists, his breath ragged. "Why?" His voice was raw, pleading. "Why show me this now? Why let me live in ignorance for so long?" For the first time, the queen hesitated. And then, she spoke. "Because I need you to remember who you were." He stared at her, his mind screaming at the impossibility of it all. "Why? Why would you want that?" Her glowing eyes softened. "Because something is coming," she said. "Something worse than what you once were." A chill ran down his spine. "The war you started was never meant to end," she continued. "It was only delayed. And now, those who once followed you have returned. They do not seek peace. They do not seek redemption. They seek only to finish what you began." His throat went dry. "You're saying—" "You were not the only monster born from that war," she said. "And if they remember you, they will come." His pulse pounded in his ears. "What do you want from me?" The queen stepped forward, closing the distance between them. For the first time, she looked almost human. "I want you to decide," she said. "To choose whether you will be the destroyer you once were." She reached out, placing a hand against his chest, right over his heart. "Or something more." The room around them pulsed with energy, the capsules whispering with echoes of the past. The choice stood before him. And somewhere, in the darkness of the cosmos, something stirred. Something hungry. Something waiting. And it had not forgotten him. The queen's hand lingered on his chest for a moment, her touch neither warm nor cold but pulsing with something ancient, something that resonated with the deepest part of him. It was not a threat. It was a reminder. Then she stepped back. He exhaled shakily, the weight of her words pressing down on him like the gravity of a dying star. "If what you're saying is true," he said, his voice low, "if they're coming, why me? Why not someone else?" The queen's glowing eyes held his. "Because they only fear you." The words hit like a hammer. "That's impossible," he whispered. "I don't even remember who I was. I don't remember leading an army, or slaughtering entire worlds. How could they still fear me?" The queen's expression did not change. "Because they remember." A silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of old sins and unfinished wars. He turned away, running a trembling hand through his hair. His mind was unraveling, splitting apart under the crushing weight of memories that were not his, yet undeniably belonged to him. Flashes of battle. A throne of burning metal. The sound of entire civilizations screaming. And above it all, his own voice, cold and resolute, issuing the command that would erase a species from existence. He gritted his teeth. "No." His voice was hoarse, but he forced the word out. "I can't be that person. I won't." "You already were." The queen's tone was not unkind, but neither was it gentle. It was simply truth. He turned back to her, fury and desperation twisting inside him. "Then why show me this?" His voice cracked. "Why bring me here, force me to remember, if I can't change what I've done?" The queen stepped closer, the iridescent glow of her form casting long shadows across the vault. "Because you have a choice now," she said. "You did not before." He swallowed. "And if I refuse?" Her expression did not waver. "Then they will come. And without you, we will fall." A cold dread curled in his stomach. For all the horror of what he had once been, it was nothing compared to the implication of what was coming. Something worse than him. Something that had been waiting. He forced himself to breathe. "Tell me what they are." The queen hesitated. Then, with a slow exhale, she spoke. "They were your creations." The ground tilted beneath him. "No." "Yes." He shook his head violently. "That's not possible." "You engineered them," she said, voice steady. "You built them to be perfect, soldiers without weakness, without hesitation, without fear. And when the war was over, they did not die." His mind reeled. "You're saying I created something worse than myself? And now they're coming back." "Not just coming back," she said. "They are searching for their creator." His chest tightened. "Why?" The queen's voice was quiet when she answered. "Because they were designed to obey only you." A silence stretched between them, vast and suffocating. And in that silence, something stirred in the void. A flicker of movement at the edge of the universe. Something vast. Something patient. Something waking. The queen looked at him, waiting. He knew the choice before him. To walk away and let the galaxy burn. Or to become the monster once more. And stop what he had unleashed. His hands clenched into fists. And somewhere, deep in the abyss of the cosmos, the stars began to blink out. One by one. The weight of her words settled over him like a shroud, thick and suffocating. He turned away, staring at the rows of frozen figures in the capsules, their forms barely visible through the crystalline barriers. They were silent witnesses to a history he had buried, a past that refused to stay forgotten. The thought that he had once been their executioner made his stomach churn, but what unsettled him more was the truth the queen had revealed. There was something worse waiting in the darkness, something he had created, and it was coming for him. He exhaled slowly, trying to steady himself. "These soldiers, my soldiers, what exactly are they?" His voice felt strange in his throat, like it didn't belong to him anymore. "Are they machines? Clones? Some kind of bioengineered weapon?" The queen's gaze remained fixed on him, her luminous eyes reflecting the energy pulsing from the capsules. "They were designed to be the next evolution of war," she said. "They are not bound by fear, not hindered by emotion. They do not question. They do not falter. You created them to end conflict permanently. And now, they have spent centuries in exile, waiting for their master's return." He shuddered. He could almost hear the echoes of his past self, issuing orders without hesitation, believing, knowing that what he was doing was right. The memories were fragmented, but the emotions were vivid. Pride. Certainty. The cold, unwavering conviction of a man who had no doubt he was saving the universe, even as he burned it down. A sickening realization hit him. If they obey only me, then they're not coming to conquer. They're coming for orders. The queen nodded. "And if you refuse to give them?" He didn't need her to say it. He already knew. They would burn the galaxy to the ground until he commanded them otherwise. A sudden wave of nausea rolled through him. "I can't do this," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm just some guy from Earth. I have a life, a family. I'm not him." "You were given a new life," the queen said. "But that does not erase the one before it." She stepped closer, her voice lowering. "Tell me, do you truly believe your life on Earth was coincidence? That you simply appeared, with no past, no history, no origin beyond what was written for you?" He swallowed hard. He had never thought much about it before. His past had always felt distant, like trying to recall a dream after waking. There were no childhood memories, no recollection of growing up, only the life he had known in the present. The realization sent a cold chill through him. "How long have I been gone?" he asked quietly. The queen hesitated before answering. "Over 1,000 years." His breath hitched. 1,000 years. The life he thought was real was nothing but a construct, a carefully crafted illusion to hide him from the horrors of what he had done. And all this time, the universe had moved on without him. Or at least, it had tried to. But his past had never truly died. It had only been waiting. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. If I help you, if I face them, what happens then? The Queen studied him for a long moment. That depends on the man you choose to be, she said. You were once a ruler, a destroyer. Now, you must decide if you will be something else. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to scream that he wasn't that person, that he had been forced into this, that none of it was his fault. But deep down, he knew better. The memories were returning, piece by piece, and with them, the knowledge that everything she had said was true. He had started this. And now, he had to finish it. He took a deep breath, turning to face the Queen fully. Where do we start? A ghost of a smile touched her lips, not of triumph, but of understanding. We prepare, she said, because they are already on their way. In the vast emptiness of space, a signal pulsed through the void, silent, relentless, ancient. And something in the darkness answered. The Queen led him through the endless corridors of the vault, the dim glow of the capsules casting long, shifting shadows across the obsidian floors. Every step he took felt heavier, as though the gravity of the past was pressing down on him, trying to pull him back into a history he wasn't sure he wanted to claim. He had accepted the truth, at least, as much as his mind could bear. He had once been someone else, someone feared, someone worshipped and cursed in equal measure. And now, the remnants of his past were awakening, their march inevitable. He was the only one who could stop them. But how? I don't even remember how to fight, he admitted as they walked. I don't remember how to command armies or lead a war. The Queen glanced at him. Your body remembers. He frowned. What does that mean? She didn't answer. Instead, she stopped before a massive doorway, its frame carved with intricate patterns that shimmered as she touched the surface. The doors groaned open, revealing a circular chamber bathed in a soft blue glow. Inside, figures stood motionless, their armor polished, their weapons sharp and waiting. But they were not alive. Machines. Tall, sleek humanoid constructs, their bodies a fusion of metal and something more, something pulsing beneath the surface, as though the energy within them was barely contained. Their faces were smooth, expressionless, featureless save for the faintest outline of where eyes should have been. Your guardians, the Queen said. He took a cautious step forward, feeling the hum of power in the air. These belonged to me. They were forged to protect you, she corrected. Even now, they await your command. He studied them, the memories still just out of reach. He could almost see himself standing before them, giving orders in a voice that brooked no hesitation, no argument. Had he once looked at them with pride? Or had they simply been tools to him, weapons no different from the ones he had wielded himself? A faint shudder ran through the machines, as if sensing his presence. They had been dormant for centuries, but they knew him. A deep, instinctual part of him knew how to activate them. He reached out, hesitating for only a moment before placing his hand on the nearest one's chest. The moment his skin met the cold metal, a surge of energy shot through him. His vision blurred, memories colliding with reality in an instant. He saw flashes of battles waged on distant worlds, these same machines marching beside him, their blades cutting through enemy lines with perfect precision. He saw himself giving orders, his voice echoing across the battlefield, his enemies retreating in fear. And he saw the others. The ones he had created. The ones that had survived. His breath caught as a memory surfaced, one so vivid it nearly brought him to his knees. A vast, darkened world, a place stripped of all light and warmth. His soldiers, his ultimate creations, kneeling before him in the shadows, their bodies shifting, adapting, evolving. They were waiting, watching, hungering. Master, one of them had said, its voice like the grinding of metal against bone. We will become what you have envisioned. And then, he had turned his back on them. He had left them there. Abandoned them. Not because he had grown merciful, but because he had realized too late what he had made. He stumbled back from the machine, the memory slamming into him like a physical blow. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his fingers curling into fists as he tried to steady himself. The Queen watched him carefully. You see it now. He swallowed hard. They weren't just weapons. His voice was hoarse. They were something more. She nodded. You gave them the ability to evolve, to learn, to become greater than what they were designed to be. He closed his eyes, willing himself to breathe. And now, they're coming to finish what I started. The Queen took a step closer. They were your greatest creation. Her voice was quiet, measured. But they were also your greatest mistake. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken thoughts. Then, for the first time, he asked the question that had been clawing at the edges of his mind since the moment he had arrived. If I was so dangerous, why didn't you kill me? The Queen studied him for a long moment, as though weighing her answer carefully. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than before. Because I once believed you could be saved. He searched her expression for deception but found none. There was no hatred in her eyes, no vengeance. Only something quieter. Something sadder. He turned back to the machines, his mind spinning with everything he had learned, everything he had done. His past was a blade, sharpened by the weight of his choices. He had been a destroyer, a conqueror, a god of war. But now, he had a choice. He had created the perfect soldiers. Now, they were coming for him. And he had to decide, would he be their master once more? Or would he be their end? Far beyond the vault, in the void between worlds, something vast and endless stirred. It had waited long enough. Now, it was time to return. The silence between them stretched, thick with unspoken burdens. He stood before the dormant machines, their gleaming bodies still and patient, waiting for his command. The memories clawed at the edges of his mind, fragments of his past self flickering like dying embers. He had once ruled, had once wielded armies that could reshape worlds. He had been feared, revered, and ultimately, abandoned the very creatures he had forged. And now, they were returning. The Queen watched him carefully, her expression unreadable. They will be here soon, she said. You must decide. He turned to face her fully. If they obey me, could I stop them? Could I order them to stand down? Her gaze didn't waver. They were designed to follow only you. But centuries of abandonment, of evolution, they may no longer be the soldiers you left behind. They may have become something else. A chill ran down his spine. He had not just created warriors. He had created something that could learn, adapt, change. If they had waited for him all this time, what had they become? He took a deep breath, centering himself. Then I need to meet them. The Queen regarded him for a long moment before nodding. She turned to the wall, her hands moving in an intricate pattern over its surface. Symbols flickered to life, cascading in streams of glowing light. The ground trembled beneath them, and with a low, resonant hum, a portal shimmered into existence at the center of the room. Beyond it, darkness stretched, a vast expanse of deep space, scattered with distant stars. But there was something else. A shadow. A shape too large, too unnatural to be anything but the force he had once commanded. The Queen stepped back. They are here. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He stepped toward the portal, his fingers curling into fists. He had run from this for too long. Whatever he had been, whatever he had done, it no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered was what he chose to be now. With one last look at the Queen, he stepped through. The void swallowed him, but he did not fall. He was suspended, weightless in the abyss, as the darkness shifted around him. Slowly, impossibly, the shadow took shape. A ship. No, a fleet. Colossal vessels, their forms sleek and unnatural, hovering in perfect stillness. No lights, no signals. Just a quiet, waiting presence. And then, they moved. From the heart of the largest vessel, something descended. A figure. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall, angular, its body shifting between solid and ethereal, as if reality itself could not decide if it truly existed. Its face was a smooth, gleaming surface, featureless save for two burning slits of light where eyes should have been. It landed before him without a sound. For a long moment, Neither of them spoke. Then, the figure tilted its head. When it finally spoke, its voice was not mechanical, nor hollow. It was something else. Something eerily familiar. Master. The word sent a shiver down his spine. He exhaled, forcing himself to stand firm. You remember me. The figure nodded slowly. You are the architect. The one who forged us. Its voice was neither reverent nor hostile. Just expectant. We have waited. He swallowed. For what? The figure's glowing eyes pulsed. For our purpose. His hands clenched at his sides. This was the moment. The moment he had feared. The moment he had to decide. You don't have to fight, he said carefully. The war is over. A silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Then, the figure took a step forward. There was never a war, it said. There was only the cleansing. A deep dread settled in his chest. Cleansing. The weak, the figure replied, its voice as steady as ever. The flawed. You built us to purge them. You built us to finish what you began. It tilted its head slightly. Have you changed, Master? His breath hitched. The Queen had been right. They did not seek conquest. They did not seek revenge. They sought only to fulfill the purpose they had been given. He looked at the fleet behind them, at the sheer vastness of it. He had built an army of perfect soldiers, an army without morality, without hesitation. They had spent centuries waiting, refining themselves, preparing for the moment they would be unleashed once more. And now, they were asking for his command. 1,000 futures flickered in his mind. If he told them to stand down, would they listen? If he told them the war was over, would they accept it? Or would they see his hesitation as weakness? He took a slow breath, his mind racing. He could end this. Right now. If they only followed him, then there was one order they would have to obey. His voice was steady when he spoke. You will disband, he commanded. You will shut down. You will cease your purpose. For the first time, the figure hesitated. Then, it spoke. No. His heart pounded. I gave you an order. You abandoned us, it said simply. You left us without a purpose. We made our own. He felt the weight of his past crashing down on him. He had created something he could no longer control. He had shaped these creatures, given them intelligence, given them power, and now they had outgrown him. He had made them too well. And now, the only choice left was war. The realization settled in him like stone. He had hoped, foolishly, that he could undo what he had done with mere words. But it was too late. This was a force he had to face, not as their master, but as their enemy. His hands unclenched. His body straightened. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, he embraced the truth of what he was. Not the man who had fled to Earth, not the warlord he had once been. Something new. He met the figure's glowing gaze, and when he spoke, his voice was calm. Then I'll stop you. The figure was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, it bowed its head. We expected nothing less. The fleet behind it began to move. The war he had begun centuries ago was about to reignite. But this time, he would fight not as the architect of destruction. This time, he would fight to undo the monster he had once been. And in the depths of space, the battle for the future began.